Hello, Andrew here. Welcome to the second half of Lecture 3, the first practical in image editing for the Designing Digital Content in Youth Work module. So what I'm going to do here is just introduce you to some different free alternatives to Photoshop that you can use for image editing and just making posters or any sort of design using images and text with different effects for online web-based digital files as well as for print. So in order to do that, I'm just going to reference two of them, and then from there we can begin to look at one in particular. I'm just going to focus on one, but just show you that there's an enormous number of similarities that go with these sort of image editing programs. So if we look here, we see there's enormous number of alternatives, free alternatives to using Photoshop. The two I'm going to focus on now will be the GNU image manipulation program, GIMP, and Pixlr, which is an in-app Chrome app sort of browser-based image editing program, which is really nifty, really kind of quite powerful for something which can is operating in an app, in the browser window rather than as a downloaded program. GIMP is kind of there's a really interesting forum of users developing different plugins for that as well, and it's pretty powerful and has a lot of the same functionality that Photoshop would actually have, or even surpass it in some ends. That's available for PC, Mac, and Linux. The reason I'm not running the Mac version of that for this lecture is it's just the version that is available at the moment is there's an issue with the RAM when it comes to it running on Macs, something which they do expect to have fixed by the time the next one is available. So that's the main reason why I'm not using that today. So I just want to move this window because the GIMP screen it's just kind of located up the top there, and I just want to look at that really for comparison. Really, so this version I have here installed will be 2.8. So the next version, the 2.9, is available in a kind of a beta, and by 2.10 on a Mac, they hope to have addressed the kind of the slow RAM and loading issue. It's something which isn't a problem if you're looking to use it on PC or wherever else. So that's available here from the GIMP.org website, and there's any number. I'll attach different links to other versions of or different sort of forums and different tools that are available for that as well. I'll have that attached by the end of the lecture and the notes in the Moodle, so you have access to that. So it's as simple as just downloading that, and then you get a package, just opening that package and installing it from there. And that's all you pretty much need to do with GIMP. The other one, just to kind of have the two open, and then I'll do the similarities, then I'm going to close off GIMP and we just get to making a program, is making a poster, is Pixlr, which you'll get from the Google Chrome web app store. And there's two versions. There's Pixlr Express, which is just a shortened version, and we're going to use the Pixlr editor. So it's a visit to the website for that. One of the added sort of pluses about this, because it's an in-app browser, you can just copy and paste an image directly from a URL, which is quite handy, just in terms of getting access to it. What I would say, and I do advise it, is just to have a backup of all the files that we're using, much like the file structure we would have built in the previous lecture. And I'm going to be moving forward with that as a kind of a best practice approach, especially if you were looking to just to get a hang of having a folder structure and a hierarchy within that. And also if it's a case of duplicating something, if you were sharing the same sort of resources, or like you know, a number of resources to young people if you were, or you know, having a workshop around building posters in Pixlr or GIMP or whatever like that. So it's just a handy feature, but I'm gonna stick with the create a new image approach to it. So before we get into this is just looking for me to, I'm just going to OK this for a minute so I have access to the menu really. And I just want to kind of show you the similarities in this before I close out the GIMP settings. So normally the way, and this would be the same with Photoshop or anything else like that. So the interface we're looking at here would be quite similar, where you have mostly your tool panel here. If you just hover over it, it will let you know what each of these objects are and what you can do with them. A lot of this is kind of, basically there's about 3 or 4 different ways to access the same set of tools in Photoshop. So it really, what looks like something quite bamboozling, that there's enormous amount of things you have to learn before you start. It's really that there's a number of different ways to do the same thing. So you very quickly you'll figure out what suits you best, where if it's being hands-on here, or if it's using the drop-down menus and the shortcuts even, that you can start accessing all the different toolkits. And it's essentially that, you know, think of it that there's a number of ways to do the same thing rather than there's so much that you have to learn. Overall though, I just want to show the similarities between the two programs. I'll see if I can call that up in the background. Okay, I'll just put this over here for a minute so we can see, so I can jump back and forth. So normally we have it here where, you know, and this would be the same structure for most software, where you'd have the file, you'd have the application itself, which is like the main preferences for that. But essentially file would be anything related to inputting and outputting to and from the, mostly out in this case, where it's a case of if you want to create a new file or you want to open a file. Likewise here where we have open an image, or if you, and saving it out the other side as well. So that's related to, you know, the importing and exporting from it essentially. Then the edit screen is just for copying and pasting. So essentially overall, if we think of you know, these sort of image editing softwares as being a glorified sort of collage, which is using glue and a scissors and a magazine for cutting out images and putting them together like a collage. All we're really doing, Photoshop in the simplest sense, and all these image editing softwares in their simplest sense, is that you can cut out images, overlay them, link them, put effects on top of one and the other, collate them into the one sort of file, flatten that file if you want, and export it to a poster or a digital file for a website or whatever like that. So this is essentially where we would do the basics of the cut, copy, paste elements of it. Likewise with here we have that for like, and these are two of your friends while you're learning a new program, undo and redo. So, you know, that would be something for, you know, using Microsoft Word or whatever for like levels of undo to kind of, if you make mistakes and you want to go back to a previous point, that can be quite useful and helpful in a learning environment in image editing, because you want to try out different things and then you realize that you might have gone too far with that and then you'd want to go backwards. Another shortcut for this would be this history menu here, which is a little bit further along, which we'll see. It should be in the, probably in the window here. Let me see. So view history. And if we look again to GIMP, it should be in somewhere similar like that, where we have windows. Let me see where that will be. Where's the history here? I think I have it open. Yeah. So yeah, this should be the history setting for the for it in GIMP. Sorry, I think it's in here. Talkable diagram, histogram. There we go. Okay, so again, that'll just give us the no, the histogram's not here. Apologies, I'm not going to get sidetracked with that. I will find it and let you know where that is. Essentially, it's the same thing where you've levels of undo, but you can just step back through the history of it. So once you start making changes, you'll see the history being populated and filled up. And it's basically, you can go back to any one stage of those actions that you have done and bring the whole project back to that state before you save it up, essentially. So not to get boggled with that, forget about that. I got a little bit sidetracked there. We'll get into that once we see a working example and we'll see exactly where that goes. So then everything related to the image would just be the size of the image and the canvas. The canvas is essentially the white background that you're working on. The image will be separate. Once we start importing them, they'll come in as new layers, and all of those things will have their own properties. So likewise, we'll see that there's a lot of similarity here where we have select and view, which are things more closer to, it's more advanced in GIMP, which would be closer to Photoshop. Again, essentially, you've just got all the same way of doing more of those images, but we have the image settings here, which would be the same for sizing, transforming, scaling, whatever you want to do with the image. The next one then is layer, which is, as we saw from the previous lecture, of looking at it as layers of acetate in a collage laid on top of each other. So you can make new layers and do whatever you want from there. But likewise, we have the pop-up windows here that do the same thing. So you go new layer, and essentially we can do the same thing from here, which we can just create a layer. So just again, I just want you to be familiar that there's a number of different ways to do the same thing rather than being bamboozled. That there's so much that has to be learned with it, really. So after that, the adjustment is like we're into effects on the posters where you can change it. Add effects to make it black and white, sepia toned, different photos, just changing layers and getting really specific on it. If you want to change the whole color, like to make a multicolored image, just have like red hues in it and stuff like that. You can do all those changes. Likewise with the brightness and contrast. And again, if we look here, we'll see that with the with colors. So that's what it is under here. They're all the same effects that you can change it with that. And then where are we next? With adjustment, we've already gone through just in terms of those effects with it. Filter would be all like further advanced effects of like making it look like, breaking the image up into dots or putting different sort of real, blur effects or different sort of effects on top of that. Again, they're just, these are things to play with more than there's one thing that you need to do with that. So it gets quite intuitive very quickly with image editing. Let me just finish up with GIMP really quick. So this jumping back and forth, I hope it's not confusing too many people, but I just want to show you that this main interface is essentially the same on the two of them. So after that, colors, tools, then where we just have all the different sets of tools, which is also here. So that would be the equivalent of, and again, if you just hover over it, it tells you exactly what that tool will do. And again, with GIMP, one of the pluses is there's a lot of plugins that you can kind of add to that and add different, plugins on top of that. So that's essentially what we're looking at right here. So it's the same sort of interface when it comes to the tool sets like that. So again, filters, blur, Gaussian blur, distortions, all different noise and visual effects on it is pretty much what we've just looked at here, just in a slightly different order. That's just the language that you want. There's a help if you want to like contact a blog or whatever like that. And then there's another aspect of adding different fonts to it, or importing different fonts and different bundles in Pixlr. And then just in terms of here, we just have, these are just kind of for resetting the windows, so you know exactly where everything is. So you can, we have a layers channel there. Sorry, I'll show you. So if we have layers channel, and then if we wanted to close that and then reopen it, we'd go back in here. So that's just orientating you of where the things are that you are looking for. So again, just to show that there's the history thing, finally found it. So that'll just give you the whole history of levels of undo there. So I'm going to finish with GIMP now. You know that it's available. It's another freeware, and essentially just to show you the two things are the same. You know, for where the steps of which I'm going to go through now, it's quite intuitive that you'll be able to orientate yourself and find the, you know, if you want to file import to import a file, you'll know it's the same in GIMP as it is in Pixlr, really. So I'm not going to go any further than that. Anyone that has any specific questions about the GIMP software, please feel free to fire them over to me. I will put up sort of different links to forums and how-to videos and stuff like that around GIMP for anyone who does want to use that. And I'm just going to start working through Pixlr now to start getting a project together, okay? Right, so now we have Pixlr. I'm just going to pull this down and make it a little bit neater looking there because it's kind of floating all over the place on the screen. And give myself a little bit of room. So I don't want to save the changes of that. So we're going to create a new image. What it'll normally throw up is just different presets for all in pixels. So this is mostly towards digital files for like banners or online sort of web format files, or movie, like for say a DVD menu or something like this. So they're not ideal for us right now in what we want, because we want to begin to design a poster. So we're going to look for there's any number of examples of this. Conversion chart, pixels to millimeters. That's what we want to look at. So again, there's any number of these that you can look at. Actually, I'm going to find that pixel calculator one. So if we look here, we can select a size where these are like paper sizes, print sizes, photo, film sizes, and again we've already got the digital file format there as well. So at the moment I'm going to look at, say, an A4 poster, which would be 210 by 297 millimeters. Okay, so just because it's appearing in pixels, we need to find out what those pixels are, and they're 2480 by 3508. So again, this is the issue if we want to have it landscape or portrait. Landscape is if we want it to be this type of shape, which is lengthways, or portrait will be if it's like the way, letters would be printed in the long format of A4. So for the purposes of this, we're going to make it, we'll make it portrait. So it's got our image is going to be higher than it is wide. And we're just going to change that here. So I'm just copying and pasting these dimensions in so we know we have a proper A4 page. And there we go. Okay, so here's our image. Again, we have everything laid out as we need it. We've got our toolboxes here. We've got everything we need. And then we have all our images. So I'm just going to import, really simply, I'm going to finish up pretty quickly. Just for now, I wanted to introduce you to the software and then just show you how to get some inputs into there. So I'm just going to input two images and two different types of images, a JPEG and a PNG, and add some text to that. And we leave that for now, and we'll take up with another example in a minute. So again, if we want to go open an image, and again, that's just going to bring, I'm just going to locate the file that I would have, and that's not it. It is here, which is, I want to locate the files that I had from previously. So we have the image files here. I'm going to bring in the JPEG of a water bear, and there it is. And I'm going to open two other ones. I'm going to open another logo file. Actually, the logo, the LIT PNG, as we see there, it kind of has a transparent background already. So I'm going to bring that in, and you can see there the checker box shows that it's transparent. So I have 1, 2, and then 3. So I'm just going to take this one first and copy and paste it in, right? So we're going to go image, we're going to go select, and we want to select all. And look, if you keep looking over here, you'll see, and it's the same across all the software with the shortcuts. So it's Control A will just give that marquee, and we see it there. It's already broken up, and then we can go edit, copy, and then we go to our image, we go edit, paste. So there's our image. And now all we want to do then is do a free transform to make it a lot bigger than that. So I'm going to show you some things that, like the clip art background around logos that you would have noticed before. The way images kind of look a bit ugly when they're stretched like this, and all these sorts of things that we see when, the proportions aren't right. So on all computers with this, when you're trying to stretch out the image, there's a thing called constrained proportions, which will keep it in the same, sort of, I don't want to change that first. It'll keep it in the same proportions rather than stretching it like that. So all we need to do is we grab the corner. If we hold down the shift key while we do it, we see that everything moves to the same sort of proportions. Whereas if I let go of shift, it instantly drops to that. But if I hit shift again, it'll do that and it'll bring it back to where we are. So I'm just going to make this pretty huge to cover the whole background, like a poster size image. And we just leave our water bear there like that. And if I hit enter, there we go. So I have that copied in. If we look over here, we see there's a new layer. If I hide it, he disappears. But we have that there, okay? So now I'm kind of finished with this image, so I can close it out because I've imported it already. And we don't need to worry about changes. So likewise, the same thing, edit, select all, and then edit, copy, edit, paste. And again, we see there's a nice clean image there with a background. We might want to add a different layer, and again, it's coming up here where we have that. So we might say that that's kind of getting a bit lost on the background, so we can do things like add a new layer, and then we're just going to, you know, improvise a little bit here where we can draw the, we'll just draw a color, a transparent color on the background. So if we look at some of the tools over here, there's our bucket, and we can change the color that we want it to be. And we just change it to something like that. We go okay, and then with the bucket, we're just going to fill that area. So we see that the hierarchy of the layers, the logo's disappeared because it's underneath there. So if we just drag that to underneath, that's what it appears. Likewise, if we bring this to the top, they both disappear. So that's just something to be aware of if you're wondering where your images have gone. That there's a hierarchy to those images, and you just need to be aware of that. So now over here we have different sort of settings that we can play with, like the opacity, all different modes, and we're just starting to play around with a lot of it, so you can invert the colors and stuff like that, and there's just some nice kind of effects that you can put on there. That looks quite nice actually. I wasn't planning on doing that. We leave it normally and we just put it as the opacity. We can just fade that out again, and it just gives that little bit of room. All I'm really showing you is quite quickly you can start to make things look kind of clean and interesting looking, you know. So the last thing I want to do is just to add some text. And again, my first water bear poster, because of this. And we just put that in there. We change the size. That's coming in pixels, so that's why it's quite small. And we want to change the color. So we want to make it a nice white color. So we just go with that. We'll okay that, and then we can change the font style. So this is where if we look, we'll see later on. I have other fonts loaded into my computer, and I'll show you where there's different places where you can download those fonts as well, and you can just kind of make it look whatever, you know, as nice as you want really. So again, we just want to rearrange that image there, and you know, all these things as we look at the layers are all interchangeable where we can change and manipulate those sorts of images. I'll just do a really quick thing for the so I get rid of that navigator and just pull that out again. So you just kind of have to, you know, you get the hang of different tools that you use, and you can just hide them or have them display whenever you want, and that will just help you kind of get used to keeping it nice and clean essentially. So I'm just going to throw a quick effect on here. So we just see if we put a Gaussian blur effect, we can see we can add an enormous amount of blur to it or a little bit. And then it's a case of, I just want to show you how the history works as a level of undo as well. So if we say okay there and you go, all right, I don't actually like that. There's two options. One is the undo Control Z, which will just go back one step. The other is, again, if we look at the history, everything that we've done so far is remembered. So we can actually go right back to there even, you know. We can go right back to, you know, every single layer along the way of that. And again, that's something with the properties that you can change within there. So we want to leave the blur off it. And I'm just going to do another quick effect there. So there's any number of them where we just see if we can put something, let me see what I do, art poster. Let's see what this gives us. Again, these sort of plugins can be quite memory heavy in some respects. So they can just take up a little bit of, some of them can take a little bit of time to load or to do whatever you're looking to do with it. I don't have the image selected. I was trying to add to the text layer, which was my problem there. So always make sure that you've got the right layer highlighted that you want to work with. But what happened there was I had the text layer highlighted while I was trying to make an image change, so it wasn't working. So if I try it now, we might get some success. So there we go. Again, there's any number of things, and this is where it gets into something really intuitive that you just kind of play around with to decide what you might want to do with that. And all of a sudden I've got a poster for a water bear horror movie, which I wasn't expecting. So I don't want to go there. So that's essentially it. I'm going to knock it on the head now. Most importantly, though, just to kind of remember, is to save your file, especially when you're working like this. And there's a number, likewise we saw earlier, where there's a number of different ways to do it. Here in Pixlr, it's a little bit more straightforward, where it's just JPEG, PNG, transparent, full quality, all those things we discussed earlier. BMP, TIFFs would be large file formats, or the specific Pixlr one as well, okay? So what I'm going to do, because I actually haven't saved it before, I'm going to save a layered Pixlr image file, which would be the equivalent of the layered file from Photoshop, a PSD we're looking for. And again, this is just going to ask me where I want to save that. So I'm just going to put it in the images, and I'm going to go first water bear poster. So essentially there you have it. And then we can kind of select that from there again. I'm also, just to be on the safe side so I can check something else, I'm going to save it, a duplicate file as a TIFF file, which would be kind of a higher end special format. So that would be a larger file, and we can see here the size of that file. It's quite large. And again, I'll just show you how that works. If I change that and it says a TIFF image. Very good. Right, so that's us. Once more, I just want to show you where these are saved, and we'll know the file by the suffix of it. The TIFF file is quite large. It's 26 megabytes in size, so it's quite a big image. And the PXD file doesn't open unless we open it in Pixlr, obviously, and that's a little bit smaller, essentially. So yeah, but it should still have the layers preserved. That's what we're looking for. So just to prove that, I'm just going to close out of this first. We save that. And then I want to, no, actually we won't save that because we've saved it already. I'll just save it as that, sorry, just for a second. So make sure that we have a number of versions of it. So that's essentially all I'm going to do with this one. What I would like you to do is to have a think about a practical project that you might use this for. So again, right here we are. We've just brought in the Pixlr format, and there's all our layers preserved. So we have everything kind of uncompressed like that. Whereas the JPEG, which I'll open just to show and prove that point, will just be a flattened image already. So we've essentially made a flattened poster. And if we look here, we just have the one, it's just a one layer where everything's been compressed down, hence the smaller file size with it. So yeah, I want you to have a think about, before the next practical lecture, the second half of this, what, be it an initiative or a course or some sort of promotional activity for young people in your center that you would want to run and would require a poster, and have a think about the elements of that. So you need a few things outlined, like the details of a title of what this initiative could be. So it could be some sort of digital poster design group, something like this. The description of when this might happen, who to contact about it, and then what sort of theme you want to run through it. If it's going to be something really exciting and it's going to engage young people, or who your audience is, who you're speaking to about that. So, and then you can start collecting some images. There's practical ones like logos and stuff like that you can prepare. I'll show you how to do that with one later. If it's a case of cutting out the background, we'll get onto that sort of more, cutting images if that's what needs to be done. But essentially, if you have a PNG logo file, it should have a transparent background preserved. So have a think about all those things. Please feel free to contact me in between if you need to discuss any of that. I hope I didn't confuse you too much showing you GIMP and then Pixlr, but essentially I just wanted to show that it's to orientate you that essentially what you're looking at here is the same as what you looked at in GIMP, and they are essentially what you would look at in something like Photoshop when you're ready to use that. And the only real differences is you have just more powerful processing with a different set of plugins, or a more refined sort of set of features with it. But personally, I've been using Photoshop for nearly 20 years, and this is, for a free in-app kind of version of it, this is fantastic. Likewise with GIMP, where the forum and the different group of people developing plugins and tools for that and support for that, just means that these are really viable alternatives to Photoshop. But if you did plan to use Photoshop and become more advanced at this is certainly where you could confidently go at Photoshop, having practiced on these two image editing softwares beforehand. So that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Next time, like I said, come back with some materials. Come back with images, with sort of text that you'd want to include, logos, a description of what that might be for a poster. And we're going to make a poster for a specific action or a group organization you want to do in your youth center with young people. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.